to 8. The riots and violence that have erupted on some of Britain's streets, defined by fighting the police, racism, Islamophobia and looting, all started in the aftermath of the fatal stabbing of 3 girls at a Taylor Swift dance class in Southport last Monday, as I'm sure you'll remember. This is after fake information spread online about the alleged attacker's identity. All of the children injured in the attack who were treated at Alder Hey Hospital have now been discharged, as you've just been hearing in the news. And last night, hundreds of people gathered in Southport to remember one of the little girls who died. One man who is still recovering physically and emotionally from the attack in Southport is John Hayes, whose office is in the same building where the dance class was taking place. The 63-year-old grandfather has been called a hero for rushing out when he heard screaming and then tackling the man wielding a knife and stopping him from getting to others. He was then stabbed himself. I spoke to John Hayes last night and I started by asking him what he remembered of that morning and realising that something wasn't quite right.
It's not unusual to hear children screaming and shouting in a very excitable way when they come out of these classes. I was sat at my desk. I didn't immediately get up. But what struck me was the fact that noise and shouting didn't abate. And when I did stand up, I saw a group of children, maybe 15 or so, running away from the building. And it was only then that one of my colleagues shouted or said words to the effect, "There's a girl outside bleeding out." I basically jumped up and ran the full length of our building. I didn't stop to look out the window, just knew that there was somebody out there that needed some help. So I ran and opened the door to be confronted by, firstly, a girl on the floor who looked quite badly injured. She had heavily blood-stained clothing. She was motionless. And then immediately the guy in front of me with a knife, hoodie. The knife had blood on it. And the next minute he's coming at me. And then we had a bit of a grapple, might not be the right word. He was flailing this knife around in front of me and I was trying to get the knife off him. I couldn't tell you at what stage that I realised I'd been stabbed, but I was stabbed in my upper thigh. I remember lashing out at this guy. I grabbed his arm, holding the knife. We weren't at close quarters. I mean, I was trying to keep away from this knife that was sort of being flailed around in front of me. Tried my level best to get hold of it, but then it became apparent that I'd been stabbed in my leg and a sort of bolt of pain, and I fell backwards. I remember kicking out. I think I did enough to deter the guy. At some stage, one of my colleagues turned the corner of the office, and this guy then, I don't know if he bolted out, backed out, ran out, and then my colleague had the presence of mind to close the door behind. Pretty scary time, quite honestly. But my overriding thought at the time was not for myself, but hugely upset that I couldn't have done more to either prevent this guy from doing what he did or, harm to these children. And I don't know to what extent I've interfered with or helped or delayed. I have no idea because I was then on the floor with quite a nasty leg injury. And
there is very much the thought that you did buy others time. What you did stopped what progress he was trying to make, if I could call it that. But did he say anything to you? Were there any words exchanged?
Not at all, no. When I opened the door, he was stood there. He had a hoodie on, but most of his face was concealed. We locked eyes on each other. I mean, he looked pretty menacing. I described him at the police station like a crouching tiger. This guy was, I knew he was registered immediately that he shouldn't have been there. Wrong guy, wrong place. And then he came at me. Whether I should have tackled him or tried to tackle him or not, I used this phrase to the policeman. I said I would like to have been more Bruce Willis about the whole thing, but I wasn't able to get the knife off him. But I don't believe he managed to hurt anybody else after. And I think in the interim period, all the children had managed to evacuate the building, apart from those that I believe were locked in the toilet with one of the yoga teachers. So if nothing else, it prevented him from doing any further harm. There was no words exchanged. He wasn't animated. He just looked, pretty menacing. It was a pretty scary type expression on his face, and it looked like he was there to cause harm. And I just got in his way, I guess.
Do you know what's happened with that particular girl?
I don't, and I don't really want to guess, but she was motionless and she looked like she'd been very badly injured.
How are you now in terms of your injury?
Well, I can't walk. I'm hobbling around on crutches. Um, my wife's doing a stellar job of looking after me. I will get better. The
Yeah.
last couple of days, I have sort of stark realization that I was lucky. I mean, it only narrowly missed my femoral artery, and I've been told if it had caught that, then I probably wouldn't be here. So
Gosh.
very grateful that I think the blade went into my leg 12 centimeters. So it's not what I would call a superficial wound, but there's no reason why I don't think I will make a full recovery. I've not even begun to process the horror show that I've seen. It's just going to take me a while to process that. So very much one day at a time.
Well, I wish you all the best with that. How do you think those that you know in your community, where you work, where you live, how do you think it's going to be moving forward?
The bits that I latched onto to try to find some positives out of all of this. I mean, first of all, I'm delighted to hear today that all of the children have now been released from hospital. So that must be good news for everybody, because we were all worried that we might hear that one or more of them was suffering or struggling. But the fact they're all released suggests they're on the mend, which is great. A lot of the children, they were tiny toddlers. So hopefully they didn't witness too much, or what they did witness, they didn't piece together, and they'll be able to get through this without too many traumatic recollections. But the things that have touched me are the elderly guy who lives close by putting flowers in water. That's just tremendous. The vigil last night, which was attended by a large group, the cleanup, which we've all heard about, all the local tradesmen rallying around, helping the local mosque that was damaged, rebuilding walls, etc. Those are the positives to take out of this, and people will come to terms with it. And I think Southport probably will be quite keen to distance themselves from all the trouble that has sparked riots around the country ever since. But I actually don't think that the trouble and the riots has got anything at all to do with the Southport stabbings. There appears to be a strong undercurrent of discontent for some time about the levels of immigration, and this is just a catalyst or a trigger, but I don't think it's the root cause. And I'm not particularly politically motivated, but I do get dismayed when I hear Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper talking about, the police are going to come down with the full force of the law, etc., on these people. But they're not actually talking about the root cause, and they need to start listening and understanding that they need to address the cause rather than the symptoms. Putting these guys in prison isn't going to deal with the sort of core issues. As I say, don't condone the violence, but there's an awful lot of unhappy people in this country at the moment that want something to be done, and I don't think until they start to address that, the government start to address that this problem's going to go away. So I think this is going to run for a while.
It's been an extraordinary week, a hugely violent week, but there's also been a lot of people coming together as well, which you've reflected from what you've seen. I just want to wish you all the best with trying to come to terms with what you saw and healing from this, which, as you started our conversation by saying, will take some time to process. John, all the best with it.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. As I say, I just hope that everybody that's involved with this in their own way can get through it, and those that were physically injured make a full recovery.
Thank you so much.
Okay, nice to talk to you.
John Hayes there. And